there's something different out there. It started on Friday and it's continued this week, and I think that we're going to blow through the old silver high of $50, certainly before the end of the year. It's going to be spectacular when this thing goes.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for October 21st through October 28th, 2024, while supplies last. This week we feature gold half-ounce backdated Canadian maples at just $110 over melt. We also have backdated silver 1-ounce Britannia at just $2.99 over spot per ounce. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're delighted to have this distinguished returning guest, Ed Steer, who's been an analyst and commentator on precious metals markets for longer than most of us can remember, is here with us again on Liberty and Finance. Ed, thank you for joining us this Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024.
Entirely my pleasure.
You've helped us to understand in a graphical way recently in your visits with our audience how remarkable it is, frankly. I was going to say emphatically, how remarkable it is the level of concentrated short positions on the major metals exchanges, the COMEX in particular, against silver, first of all, gold secondly, and the other precious metals as well, and how this has continued to escape remarkably the eye of the overseers, the CFTC and others that are supposed to be enforcing free, fair, and open markets, seem to think that that's not a bit of concern. And yet we have seen just in the last week a renewed strength of both gold and silver, gold holding above the $2,700 per ounce mark nominal price, and silver breaking cleanly above the $33 that it had reached and touched on a couple times before, now in the mid-34s. The question always arises, is this the end of the suppression scheme or the concentrated short position, and are we now in a new era, a turning of the tide of how metals will be behaving on the markets? It's difficult to answer, but I know no one better than yourself to try to pose that question to. So we're going to ask you your view of this in light of your latest research.
Okay, well, this falls into the category of, I hate to say it, but I'm not sure whether it's different this time or not, and I hate to say it because it's always been the same old story. And you're right about the concentrated short position in silver. It hasn't gone away. It's still way up there, nosebleed level in both silver and gold, especially silver. It's been high for the last 2 or 3 months, and I see nothing that's happened since the cutoff the last Tuesday to indicate that the collusive commercial shorts are either reducing their short positions in either of those precious metals. They continue to pile on the short side. Today, at the close of COMEX trading on Tuesday, is the cutoff for this Friday's Commitment of Traders report. I'm hoping there's some short covering going on, but, I'm not seeing it in the price. It's been rising steadily. And normally, if you have a short covering rally where people are panicking and covering shorts, you're going to see the price gap up like $1, $2, $3 at a time, where people, anybody that's short, like smaller traders that are short 1 or 10 or 15 or 20 contracts, jump into the market and say, look, I'm out like $150,000 on this trade and I got to cover. And they jump in and they bid the price up, and you'll see it gap higher. We haven't seen any of that yet. And although everybody's enthused about the price, including me, I'm sitting here and I've been looking at the screen for the last 3 hours, and I'm saying it's about bloody time. Okay, but I don't see any indication yet that the shorts are panicking, even though according to silver analyst Ted Butler work, the shorts are about at least $35 billion in the hole right now on all their collective short positions in both gold and silver. So is it different this time? I don't know. But right now, I'm just enjoying the ride like everybody else and looking at the stock portfolio and saying, thank heavens.
Now, one of the things that is reported to have been driving this rise in gold price and silver price is unprecedented increase in concentrated buying from, I would say, BRICS bloc countries and central banks and governments as well. Some of that announced publicly, some of it not. Russia certainly did make an announcement. India has certainly been acquiring a lot of physical silver, for example, for solar industry, it's other industrial purposes, et cetera, and who knows as far as strategic reserves, national reserves as well. Russia specifically announcing a month-long or more program of multiple times increase from their regular amount of physical buying. China, interestingly enough, reputedly going all over the world purchasing unrefined doré and ore that can be concentrated in China without going through the major exchanges. But what I'm getting at is, do you have any insight into any of this extra demand that's been existing in the last quarter, and whether it's expected to persist into the future as well as a firm underpinning for the physical demand side?
Well, I'll tell you what. You look at the price and you know there's something going on. Somebody's driving this market. Who it is, I don't know. I don't know whether it's central banks or what's going on. All I know is that, as everybody can see by looking at the chart, somebody is in there aggressively in the paper markets driving the price higher. The demand is out there. Like you said, China's been going around buying up all the doré and all the concentrate they can get their hands on. And I had confirmation of that from somebody at First Majestic Silver. So this is an absolute fact that this is going on. And you were talking about India imports in August, and I have their numbers right here and posted in my column this morning. In August, they imported 4.07 million ounces of gold plus 46 million ounces of silver. And they've been doing that. I think in the first quarter, they imported 120 million ounces, and they've been buying this stuff up hand over fist all year long. And, this is big demand on top of what, of a deficit, that's going to be about 215 million ounces this year. So there is big demand, and I get the impression that, everybody in the world knows that the, silver A is in a deficit, and B, it's underpriced by a factor of at least 8 or 9. Silver should be trading around $250 to $280 an ounce right now. That's where it should be. And the other thing that I found very interesting, and I commented on it in my column as soon as I saw it, the London Bullion Market Association, or Metals Association, LBMA, whatever you want to call it, they had their meeting in London. I don't know where the heck it was, but the story came out the other day that everybody they're basically a gold-oriented organization, but all these guys that were there, guys and girls that were there, and these are the blue chip members. These are the hoi polloi of the precious metals world. I mean, these guys are the ones with the money, the influence, power, and everything else. Their number one choice for 2025 was silver. And when you see that kind of money and that kind of power saying that silver is the number one go-to asset, you just know that somebody's in this market buying it up. So like I said before, I don't know. Nobody knows what's driving this market. But I can tell you right now, after literally decades, since 2011, since we hit $50 last time, it's been a long 13-year drought. And, until we have more clarity or somebody comes out and says, we've been doing the buying, what I'm doing is like what everybody else are doing, just going along for the ride and enjoying it.
In addition to the data points that you mentioned, we also were highly interested in looking at the World Gold Council survey that they released just about a month ago regarding the reasons that were stated by central bankers all around the world as to why they thought gold was important, or why they expected to be buying more in the next year, and why they thought that their peers around the world were buying gold, what the main reasons were. And interestingly enough, there was a historical shift from prior year, not only amounts of intention and interest to buy gold, but more enlighteningly to me, it was the reasons, the driving, compelling reasons behind it, and including such things as absence of counterparty risk in times of default, or real assets to hold in times of crisis, and protection against runaway inflation, et cetera. So the reasons that are now bubbling to the top of the mind share for those at the helm of the largest, arguably the largest accumulations of metals in the planet, seem to be focusing around crisis, default, the counterparty default, et cetera. Any comments from your analysis or your research on those topics?
Well, the BIS reclassified gold as a tier 1 asset. Well, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago, 10 years ago. I can't remember. It's been such a long time. So now it's just as good as cash. As a matter of fact, it's better. And there's no central banker in the world out there, or anybody that's in central banks or governments or whatever. They all know. Everybody knows, even though they don't write about it very much. The people at the top of the food chain want to keep this paper system going as long as possible, but underneath, they're talking the big talk, but underneath, there's no question about it that they're in the market buying precious metals, and both gold and silver are in play now. You can just look at the price and say, there's something different out there. It started on Friday and it's continued this week, and I think that we're gonna blow through the old silver high of $50, and certainly before the end of the year. It's going to be spectacular when this thing goes.
People who've been holding precious metals for the past decade plus are generally already deeply, understanding the need for constitutional money, sound money, real money, the things that have stood the test of time through all governments, all eras, all generations, have proven to be valuable to protect oneself financially through inflation and hyperinflation and regime change, et cetera, civil unrest, on and on and on. But even some of the tried and true stalwarts who have been stacking for a long time have been worn down. They've been weary of this long, I guess you could say, interruption in what would have been the normal progression for silver in particular. Can you address that phenomenon of basically staying with what you know to be true from a fundamentals basis? And certainly Rick Rule, who the former CEO of Sprott Asset Management, has talked to our audience about this multiple times, about you have to be willing to be wrong for a while if you know you're right on the fundamental basis. But what's your take on that approach, and how can people perhaps now be encouraged, but also be able to communicate out to their friends and family members and coworkers and neighbors, et cetera, who maybe are completely still in the dark and left exposed and unprotected?
This is one of these asset classes, like any asset class that sits in obscurity for years, if not decades at a time. But when it's time and the sun comes, it's amazing to watch. We've had a couple of bull markets in gold and silver since I've been in this space since 1997. And, it's always only a small fraction of the population that gets involved until things really get insane to the upside, and then more people get involved. Everybody, you, me, and everybody else listening to this podcast has talked to, countless people. They should be buying this. They should be buying this. I've been telling people to buy silver for 20 years now. And some people just don't care. They don't listen. You might as well be talking to a post. They're just, no matter what happens, they're not going to do anything. So, all you can do is go out there and be an evangelist for this and preach as much as you want. But some people just aren't going to be believers. And the fact of the matter is, as this debt-based currency system, comes to a unhappy end, in the end, you've got to look after, yourself and your family, and make sure that when this whole thing comes crashing down, that they're protected. And some people just aren't going to listen, and unfortunately, a large portion of the population are going to end up getting their heads handed to them, which is most unfortunate.
In the light of that, do you have recommendations for when people are just getting started? And there's a lot of people that are just getting started. They're going to be even more in the next quarter, I hope. I mean, for their own good, I hope. When people are just getting started, whom you talk to, do you direct them in a particular direction as far as saying, look, you should emphasize these types of bullion or that sort of thing as being the most versatile or the most effective hedge against purchasing power destruction, or the most recognize in times of low trust or distress? What are your words of wisdom that you offer to people when they're just getting started?
It all depends on how much money they got. If somebody's got a large amount of money put in, the odd time I run into somebody's going to put in 100,000 or more than that, or 50 or whatever, then I say, look, if you're a gold guy or a gold girl, I would buy a few ounces of gold. But I said where the money's going to be made is in silver, which has been depressed now. Nobody knows what the true price of silver is, but it's a lot higher than it is today. If you want to make your money, I would put it in silver. But most people I talk to, they got $1 or $2 or $3 or $5,000 or $10,000, and I tell them, look, the first thing you got to do is you got to buy physical metal in hand, 1 ounce rounds. I don't care whether they're maple leafs or kangaroos. Because I'm in Canada here, I stay away from the U.S. Silver Eagles for two reasons. First of all, they're bloody expensive. They're more expensive than your standard 1 ounce round. That's number one. And number two, they're not 4/9 fine. Now at $30 or $34 an ounce silver, 3/9 plus fine is fine. But if it gets up to $300, then it may make a difference. But I tell people to buy physical first, and then put the other half into, if they feel comfortable, put some of it in the shares of the silver mining companies. And what I tell people is that don't try to rifle shoot this thing. In other words, buy a stock, this stock and that stock. Buy a good, solid mutual fund. And in the U.S., I own some of this myself, even though it's a U.S. stock. That's SILJ, the junior silver miners. I said, put it in there. They cover 25 or 30 or 40 different companies, and that's your safest bet. And here in Canada, we have the only silver fund that we have is called 9 Point Silver Equities. It's traded in out of I think Sprott. It's under Sprott management, and that's a mutual fund as well. And that's what I tell people, put some money in that and buy some physical. Buy as much physical silver as you feel comfortable, and buy as much shares as you feel comfortable with. But just get in the market, because when this thing does go, it's going to go big.
When you talked about coaching people who are really just getting started to get some silver in their hand, some coins in their hand, for people who are considering vault storage as an alternative, if they're going to be stacking more than they're comfortable guarding themselves at home, for example, are there any renewed concerns following, for example, the trucker freedom rally that happened in Canada a couple of years ago was interrupted in part by government action to freeze and seize bank accounts of people that were even supporters of the protesters. Regardless of where you stand on the protest itself, that action by the government caused some significant concern on the parts of people who are considering, for example, Canadian vault storage as beyond the reach of typical meddling governments. Any thoughts personally from you as you surveyed and lived through that episode, and what you imagine going forward and with the safety and security and privacy of Canadian vault storage versus other potential vault storage versus home storage?
Okay, first of all, most people who buy silver for the first time aren't going to be buying enough to worry about that. If you're going to get into vault storage, you're going to be talking about 5, 10, 15, 20,000 ounces before it becomes economically worthwhile. That's the first thing. Now, getting back to the trucker situation, when that happened in Canada, it was horrific. I mean, I was horrified by it. But in the end, it's the backlash against the government was so horrific. And the banking system was just terrible. I mean, they knew they'd screwed this thing up. And so there was a lot of backtracking on this, and it'll never happen again. Trust me on that. So as far as I'm concerned, the Canadian vaulting services here in Canada are just as good as anything you'll find anywhere else. But that episode does stick out, and everybody likes to bring it up and say, look at that. And I say, well, that's true. But a lesson has been learned, and I'll tell you what, the government got really brushed back from the plate, so did the banking system. And most vaulting services are private anyway, so it's not really a concern because doesn't involve the banks or the government. So, it's nothing I'm concerned about. And am I concerned about confiscation? I'll just sort of head off in that direction. I'll tell you what, it's impossible to tell. we've been under this fiat currency system since 1971 when Nixon took the U.S. off the gold exchange standard. And no time in recorded history, and I'm talking about before 1971, does anybody know what the true price of gold and silver and platinum and palladium really are. And in extremis, when this paper debt-based financial system does melt down, and it's going to melt down one way or another sooner or later, there's no telling what the governments of the world will do when that happens. And, the U.S. government in particular, and I hate to pick on them because, they're basically an empire. And they throw their weight around the world, and everybody knows that. And that's what this BRIC conference in Kazan, Russia, that started today is all about, is to get out from under the thumb of Uncle Sam. And so, I would be worried about what the U.S. is going to do and some of the great, the larger countries. So confiscation is an issue. I don't lose any sleep over it. But when this current financial system comes to an end, something has got to replace it. And I said I would quote something out of my column today, and this is what it is. It says, "We are unquestionably at a major deflection point in the 53-year-long battle between everything paper and everything physical. And sooner or later, the rush may already be started. We may be looking at it right now. It started last Friday. Who knows? But one thing is for sure is that the system we have right now won't be around even 2 or 3 years from now. So, like I said, for most people, buy physical silver, physical gold. Do a little midnight gardening. It doesn't. You don't. 300 or 400, a couple of thousand ounces is easy to hide. You got a closet someplace. It's not a big deal, but just buy the stuff and get it in hand.
Ed, if people want to follow your analysis on a more frequent basis than your roughly monthly check-ins here with us on Liberty and Finance, how should they stay connected to you?
Well, just Google my name, Ed Steer, S-T-E-E-R, and Ed Steer Gold and Silver. My website will pop up, and there's a tab on there where there's a sample column, and they can see what I write about every day. And I write about 260 columns a year, 5 days a week. And if they're interested, it costs $100 per year. And if you're in Canada's current exchange rate in our fiat currency, it's about $138.
Well, Ed, we're so grateful. I mean, you came on originally to talk to us about the legacy of Ted Butler after his passing. We miss him deeply for many reasons and wish that he were able to chat with us now about the events that are transpiring right now as we speak. I have no doubt that he's well aware of them from where he is, but just still grateful for your presence with our audience and to continue to bring your studied views of what is happening and kind of to pull back the curtain so we can see what's going on behind that and under the hood, et cetera. As these things unfold and develop, it's extremely valuable to me, to all of our viewers and subscribers, to have you in our court and helping us to see this through your eyes. And as always, we're grateful for your presence here with us on Liberty and Finance.
And may I add, before you go, and thank you for bringing up Ted Butler's name. I've been a student and disciple of his for the last 15 years. And everything that you're hearing me talking about today on this podcast came through him first. He is the Oracle Delphi. He was the Oracle Delphi of the precious metals market, and I want nobody out there to forget that. And like I said, I'm just a student.
Well, thank you, Ed, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon. We may have to have you more often on as things are seeming to accelerate and the developments are coming faster and faster, and we're passing the signposts perhaps faster than we have in a long time. We should adapt our approach accordingly to keep everyone better informed, but grateful for your presence here today. Thank you.
You know where I am.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for October 21st through October 28th, 2024, while supplies last. This week we feature gold half-ounce backdated Canadian maples at just $110 over melt. We also have backdated silver 1-ounce Britannia at just $2.99 over spot per ounce. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.